So I'll jump right in. We've got a wonderful multilingual conversation today. I only speak English. I don't speak Arabic or Hebrew. So bear with us as we move through some translation. I think it's really wonderful and important that we hear voices directly from the ground. So I'm looking forward to the conversation. My name is Sarah Sturm. I'm a program director at Telos. For those of you who are joining a Telos event for the first time, the Telos Group's an American nonprofit. We're building a world in which all can flourish by unleashing our power to confront injustice. And what that means for us in Israel-Palestine is that we're working for a time when America and most countries around the world sustain the mutual flourishing of all Palestinians and Israelis, something we admittedly feel very far from today. Our conversation today is going to center on the village of Walaja, as well as the broader context in Jerusalem and East Jerusalem. And why are we having this conversation, especially when it's not necessarily making headlines? Under the cover of the war in Gaza, home demolitions and displacement in East Jerusalem and across the West Bank have increased, as well as settlements have continued to expand. And as we know, in order to understand any one piece of what happens in Israel-Palestine, we have to understand the bigger context and picture. So it's really important to see what's happening not just in Gaza, but across the whole Holy Land. Our guests today are three wonderful folks from the ground. We have Hassan Abutin, who's on the village planning committee for Walaja, Annie Kantar Ben Hillel, who's one of the Friends of Walaja, a poet, translator, and teacher, and Aviv Tatarsky, who's a researcher for ReImagine and a nonviolent activist. I want to hand over the conversation to our guests as soon as possible, but a little bit of context on Walaja before we dive into where we are today. The village is located halfway between Jerusalem and the West Bank. It's in the municipality of Jerusalem and has some pretty unique zoning issues and challenges because of this. During the Nakba in 1948, when the state of Israel was created and Palestinians were displaced and temporarily or permanently fled and moved around, over 1,600 village residents had to flee their homes and temporarily leave. After the armistice, the Green Line was drawn right through the middle of the village, and 70% of historic Walaja was lost. Another really important date historically to know about that I'm sure our guests will also speak to is in 1967, when Israel reunified Jerusalem and officially annexed East Jerusalem. During that time, Walaja's northern area effectively became part of the Jerusalem municipality, and even though that area now falls under the jurisdiction and responsibility of the Jerusalem municipality, the authorities have intentionally refused to provide a zoning plan for the community. And that means that residents cannot get permits to build structures. It also means that there's been increased settlement expansion around the village, and that is what we are here to dive in and talk about today. So I'd love to start with Hassan, and again, we've got some translation that will be happening, and he just left the Zoom. Let me see if I can find him again. If he's not right back, then we might jump right to Aviv just for some context. But if I can find Hassan, I'd love to hear any other information that's important about the current situation regarding the village demolitions and the current context for residents. And I'm not sure he's still on the call, so hopefully we can get him back right away. But in the meantime, Aviv, because we've got tight time together, I'm wondering if you can give us some of the larger context while we wait for Hassan. Walaja is unique and also not unique. What is the bigger political context right now in Jerusalem, and why is that important to understand when we think about villages, zoning, home demolitions, all of these themes?
Right. Thank you very much, Sarah, and thank you very much for Telos for both initiating this evening, and it's part of actually your long-term support for Walaja and for what we'll be hearing tonight. So I'll improvise here a bit because, of course, we want to be speaking about Walaja, and Hassan will be telling us the details. I'll try to first give the broader picture. As Sarah mentioned, you know, I'm an Israeli Jew. And the existence of the state of Israel, which I'm a happy and proud citizen of the state of Israel, is intertwined, is inseparable from displacement of Palestinians, from discrimination, from occupation, And in recent years, also more and more voices are saying apartheid. And a big part, or maybe if we had to say in one sentence, what is this conflict about? It's about identity, it's about freedom, it's about statehood, but the things we are fighting over, two crucial issues, are demography and land, control of land. This was right from the start of Zionism. But if we jump to present day situation, then in 1967, with the occupation and with the annexation of what we call today East Jerusalem, Israel basically chose to create a situation where Jerusalem is a binational city, but the political power is concentrated only in the hands of Israelis, because East Jerusalemites, Palestinians in Jerusalem and in the West Bank, but Palestinians in Jerusalem are not citizens. They don't have, they're denied political representation, okay? And the state of Israel views itself, we view ourselves as a Jewish state, okay? And that, of course, is in very strong contradiction with the reality of Jerusalem as a binational city. And you can say the whole of the land, today between the Jordan River and the sea, including the Gaza Strip and the disaster that's being created there right now. There are probably more Palestinians in this land than Jews today, but Israel has where I hope I managed to stay. Okay, so from, if I just zoom into Jerusalem, from 1967, Israel has to contend with this very strong contradiction between what it calls itself, seeing itself as I said, a Jewish state, but also a democratic regime. And on the other hand, the reality is binational, and the state is not happy with that, okay? So control of land and control of demography have been major issues in Jerusalem ever since 1967. And the main tools for that, all through the years, it's already 56 years, have been the planning and building policy. To make it maybe simple, if people are to be present anywhere, but let's say in Jerusalem, if people are to be present, first they need to have a home. Okay, so the Israeli authorities' rationale went like this: if we make it difficult for Palestinians to acquire housing in Jerusalem, they will have to go elsewhere. Okay, and if we make it difficult for Palestinians to acquire housing, then the Palestinian population also will not spread over more and more areas. So the planning and building policy is a central tool for Israel to control both land and demography in Jerusalem. That has not been new, okay? That, as I said, is since 1967. Of course, over decades, there are different stages and dynamics and so on. And one of the major things that took place in the recent years is the previous American administration, the Trump administration, that really green-lighted a lot of Israeli aspirations that for decades were like the United States and the international community were saying no to them. Basically annexation, okay? So in 1967, Israel annexed East Jerusalem. This was not recognized by the international community. On the one hand, Israel wanted this recognition, which you may remember the Trump administration did give, moving the embassy to Jerusalem and so on. And also wanting to annex more areas in the West Bank, which until today is not annexed. And this also with the Trump plan, what he called the deal of the century, was supposed to happen. Despite the fact that the Trump plan was very quickly, thrown away, there's nothing left of it, it did give the signal for faster, quicker, accelerated, what we call a de facto annexation. So creating facts on the ground that are very difficult to reverse, and that really, even if formally areas are not annexed, basically Palestinians are pushed out, Israelis move in forms of settlements or other ways, and it's very difficult to undo. Why is this relevant, especially for Walaja? Because of what Sarah mentioned when she was speaking very shortly, that Walaja is on the edge of the annexed area, on the edge of Jerusalem, on the way to Bethlehem. Okay, so the Israeli authorities look at different areas in the West Bank, but certainly one of the most important areas is Jerusalem and its surroundings in the West Bank. And there is this term or vision or strategy of Greater Jerusalem, how to continue and expand Israeli presence around Jerusalem, what is today's settlements, for example, settlements around Bethlehem, settlements in the West Bank, in the Bethlehem area, and tie them strongly to Jerusalem. So again, that with the aim that it cannot be undone. In order to do that, this of course breaks up Palestinian space. So if we take areas and say, okay, the settlements are contiguously tied into Jerusalem, it means that we start disconnecting Bethlehem from the villages around it, from other towns around it, and so on. And this really strongly hits Walaja, which is basically the closest Palestinian village to Jerusalem. So it's really, from Israeli eyes or the Israeli government eyes, it's like a thorn in the side. Like, why is it there? It's really disturbing us. From the daily lives of people in Walaja, it means that this huge state effort that Israel is really invested in is basically intending to wipe them out. Okay, to put it like very, very bluntly. And this would be a very good time to move back to Hassan.
And he is back. So that's a
He's
perfect
back.
transition of
Great.
you. Yeah.
Okay.
So Annie, we'll turn to Hassan in a moment. I just can't spotlight him
بس
while
ما
he's not
نادين
here.
معتصم
Perfect. Yeah.
אתם רואים אותי?
כן, חסן, אחלה. עכשיו בדיוק מתאים שאתה תמשיך לדבר ואני תתרגם אותך.
אז אתה רואה אותי?
כן.
הבנתי. טוב, אז אני אתחיל.
מצוין,
مرحبا
בבקשה.
بكم. مرحبا بكم ومساء الخير للجميع. أبدأ كلامي بأقول لكم رمضان كريم وعيد سعيد سنة تكون جيدة وتكون ذات سلام سنة بدون هدم للمنازل في شرقي القدس وفي الولجة خاصة، وسنة تكون لنجاحنا في عمل مخطط هيكلي في قرية الولجة.
It cut off a slight bit for me, but hello everyone. Ramadan Kareem, a happy holiday. May this be a year without demolitions, especially in Walaja. تفضل.
أنا حسن أبو التين ما بعد من لجنة التي أقمناها في قرية الولجة من أجل مساعدة السكان لوقف هدم المنازل ومساعدة السكان لعمل خارطة هيكلية في قرية الولجة.
So I guess Annie didn't hear Hassan, so I will translate this. He's introducing himself. He's saying, I'm Hassan Abutin. I'm part of the committee set up by the village to deal with the problem of home demolitions and to advance a zoning plan.
وكل عمليات الهدم التي تحدث في القرية هي بسبب السياسات الإسرائيلية العنصرية ضد السكان العرب في شرقي القدس بسبب سياسات الحكومات الإسرائيلية.
Annie, should I continue?
keeps cutting off. I'm trying to put on a hotspot, but it's not
I'll
letting
take
me.
it. So Hassan is saying that this huge problem of home demolitions that is taking place in Walaja has to do with Israeli policies, Israeli racist policies against Palestinians in East Jerusalem.
ومن هنا أريد أن أشكركم وأشكر مؤسسة تيلوس على هذا اللقاء وعلى مدرائها والشكر لمدرائها على اهتمامهم بعدالة قضيتنا في الولجة.
And I really want to thank Telos for organizing this event and enabling us to tell you about what's going on in our village.
بسبب عمليات الهدم والتهجير للسكان القرية.
So Hassan will be focusing, although Walaja has a very rich story, he will be focusing on the problem of home demolitions, which risks actually displacing the community.
فأنتم لا تعلمون كم هذا صعب وكم هذا ظالم أن تنام اليوم في بيتك ويأتي الصباح وترى الجرافات وترى الجنود حوالين البيت يريدون أن يهدموا بيتك. حتى لو دعيم كما زي كشي كما زي كويف.
And you can't imagine how terrible and what injustice it is to wake up in the morning and to discover that bulldozers and soldiers are approaching your home with the intention of demolishing it.
وهناك أعضاء من مؤسسة تيلوس قاموا بزيارة الولجة ورأوا هذه المعاناة والظلم الواقع على السكان.
And groups of Telos have visited Walaja on several occasions and heard and saw the distress of the community.
وأنا في هذا اللقاء أدعو كل من يقوم بزيارة القدس أن يأتي لرؤية هذه المعاناة ولزيارة الولجة لرؤية هذه المعاناة، وزيارته هي دعم لنا كسكان في الولجة.
And whoever comes to East Jerusalem and comes to Walaja really sees and understands our situation, the situation of the residents in Walaja.
وبسبب ضيق الوقت سأتحدث الآن عن الولجة، عن بعض الأمور عن الولجة.
And Hassan will say a little bit more now about the situation in Walaja.
تقع الولجة جنوب غرب القدس، وقام الحكومات الإسرائيلية بتهجير سكانها عام 48 و67، وعملوا على بناء جدار فصل العنصري حوالين الولجة، حول الولجة. وبصادرت آلاف الدنومات خارج الجدار، ومنعوا أصحاب الأراضي من الوصول إلى أراضيهم لأن الجدار أحاط بكل قرية الولجة.
Okay, so as some background to see that what's happening now with the home demolitions is part of a larger policy. The Walaja community was uprooted in 1948. Then again in 1967, after the occupation and annexation, some people were uprooted again. In 2010, Israel built a separation barrier on village lands around the village, causing it to lose thousands more dunams, which the barrier basically disconnected from the village.
واستمرار الحكومة الإسرائيلية بالهدم للسكان معناه يريدون أن يكون هذا التهجير الثالث.
And if this policy of home demolitions of the recent years continues, we risk being expelled for the third time.
قرية الولجة قسمت إلى 3 أجزاء، هي سي تابع للمنهال المزرعي للجيش، وبي قسم أراضي، بعض الأراضي حوالي 30 دنم فقط لمنطقة بي، والجزء الأكبر هو تابع للقدس، والذي هناك تتم عمليات الهدم بلا رحمة، فهم يريدون أرض بدون سكان.
So in Walaja, there's also a peculiar phenomena that the annexation line that Israel determined, unilaterally in 1967 runs through the village, which means that it separates the community, from a bureaucracy point of view, from a legal point of view. Half the community was not annexed, so they are living in the West Bank officially under military law, and half the community was in the area annexed to East Jerusalem, so officially they belong to Jerusalem municipality. After 1993, with the Oslo Accords, the West Bank was divided into 3 areas, A, B, and C. It's maybe not so important for this evening, because the home demolitions are taking place in the annexed part, so in the East Jerusalem part, and there they're taking place without any mercy.
فبدأت عمليات الهدم في 1991 في قرية الولجة، وكان من يقوم بالهدم هي بلدية الاحتلال، وكانت تهدم بيت أو بيتين في السنة وليس بكميات كبيرة.
So demolitions in Walaja in the annexed part began in the 1990s. They were carried out by the municipality, which Hassan calls the occupation municipality. And at that time, they were happening actually at a slow, even a very slow pace. It's saying like a home here, a home there.
ولكن بعد إقرار قانون إسرائيلي، قانون كيمت، القانون العنصري، والذي يعني التسريع في هدم البيوت العربية، تم هدم أكثر من 75 منزل في الجزء التابع لمنطقة القدس.
8 years ago, the government made new legislation changing the planning and building law in order with the purpose of speeding up demolitions, targeting Palestinian communities either inside the Green Line in the state of Israel or East Jerusalem. And that took place in 2016. Since then, 75 homes were demolished in Walaja.
وهنا أفيف نحن نتحدث عن 75 عائلة، لكل عائلة 5 أولاد وزوجة. هذول السكان تهجروا من بيوتهم بدون أي سبب.
So if you're speaking about
عن 400 نحكي عن 400 شخص طلعوا من بيوتهم أفيف بدون سبب.
We're thinking of 75 families. Think of a household of 5 or even more people in each household, in each family. Then we're speaking about hundreds of people, probably more than 400 people who in recent years lost their homes for no reason.
وفقط قبل 3 أسابيع قاموا بهدم 10 منازل لسكان القرية وتهجير أصحابها من المنزل.
Just the last month in February, the second half of February, in a period of like 2 weeks, 10 homes were demolished in the village. 10 families lost their home in 2 weeks.
وأريد أن أتحدث عن هذا، عن يوم من هذه الأيام عمليات الهدم. فكانت آني صديقتنا آني كانت موجودة، وهي رأت كيف تعامل الجنود وأخرجوا النساء والأطفال من البيت، ولم يعطوهم فرصة حتى أن يخرجوا أغراضهم من البيت، وبكت أكثر مما بكى أصحاب المنزل.
Sorry. And like on some of these demolitions, Annie was there in the village, and she also saw how soldiers are forcing the families out of the homes, families not being able even to take out their belongings, and the homes demolished.
Glad that Aviv has been at the demolitions. Frequent flyer.
وبعد قانون كيمينيت أنشأ وحدة خاصة تابعة لوزارة المالية والتابعة لسموتريتش، وأنشأوا تابعة لسموتريتش والتي تعمل على إعطاء إنذارات هدم لسكان القرية.
The demolitions are carried out by an enforcement unit, which is not a part of the Jerusalem municipality. It's actually a national unit that sits under the Ministry of Finance. This is quite peculiar. It doesn't really happen in other municipalities, which are supposed to be responsible for whatever enforcement they do. So it shows how much Israeli authorities are intent on targeting East Jerusalemites. And Hassan is also mentioning that currently the finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, he is one of the most right-wing, extreme right-wing politicians in Israel, and he holds this authority over demolishing homes in Walaja.
فهناك في القرية أكثر من 50 إنذار، 50 بيت معرض للهدم، وهناك قضية واحدة هي قضية 38 بيت، وأنا بيتي من هذه البيوت، والذي يوجد الآن في المحكمة العليا، ونحن مربوطين في المحكمة العليا على تقدمنا في المخطط الهيكلي للقرية.
So maybe we will later we'll explain more about the legal aspects, but Hassan is mentioning that currently there are 15 homes that received recently demolition orders and are threatened by the demolitions, and the families will, they are at risk of losing their homes. There are also 38 other families who received demolition orders 7-8 years ago, and they appealed to the Israeli Supreme Court, demanding to get a zoning plan that will allow the homes to stay, not to be demolished.
فيأتي المفتشين كل أسبوع أو كل أسبوعين ويعطوا إنذارات للهدم، ومكتوب في الإنذار أنك بنيت بدون ترخيص، وهذا كذب وهذا غير صادق. من أجل أن يكتب أنك بنيت نجد حوك تاريخ ليوت بو تخنيت متقار تخنيت شيئتا تخلو تصير ريشيون لحركة يجد لك أنت بنيت نجد حوك.
So now we're starting to get into a little bit what's going on there. Hassan is saying that weekly inspectors from this national unit go into the village, and they distribute demolition orders. The orders claim or declare that the homes were built illegally, were built without the required building permit. But that is really a false way of presenting things, because people in Walaja have no way to receive building permits. Basically, the state has created a situation where it is impossible for anyone in the village, in the next part of the village, to receive a building permit.
فليس من الممكن أن تدعي إسرائيل أنها دولة ديمقراطية ومنذ عام 1967 وقرية الولجة تعاني مع عدم وجود أي مخطط هيكلي للسكان حتى يقوموا بالبناء ضمن القانون.
So Israel, which calls itself a democratic state, basically since 1967, since the annexation of Walaja, has not made a zoning plan for the annexed part, but implemented the Israeli law that demands zoning plans and building permits, and therefore created this impossible situation that people cannot get building permits.
فالتمييز العنصري أفيف يعني شيء في هناك مخطط هيكلي للجيلو لمقابل الولجة، وقاموا ببناء 4000 وحدة سكنية على أراضي الولجة، ويمنع سكان القرية الولجة من أن يكون لهم مخطط. وهناك مستوطنة ثانية يريدوا أن يقوموا تسمى هارجيلو 2 على أرض الولجة، وقادرين أن يعملوا لها مخطط. هذا هو التمييز العنصري بين العرب واليهود.
And if there's like any doubt regarding is this race has to do with a racist policy, then all around Walaja, on lands expropriated from the village, thousands of housing units were built in settlements, and there is a plan also for a new settlement. So while in Walaja itself, people are denied a zoning plan and cannot get building permits, lands that were expropriated from the village, their planning either took place or is being advanced, and Israeli settlers live there.
نحن ليس ضد اليهود أن يكون لهم مخطط، هم يريدون أن يحموا أطفالهم ويسكنوا في بيوتهم، ونحن نريد أن يكون لنا بيت وأن نحمي أولادنا وأن يكون لنا مسكن. نحن רוצים לחיות ביחד בשלום אבל בשוויון.
So we do not hate Jews, and we of course we accept, or we want that Israelis be able to live in their homes, and we want the same for us and for our children, and we want to be able to live together in peace.
سكان الولجة هم يبنوا بسبب التعداد السكاني. أنا وأولادي 7 اليوم، أنا أعيش أنا وأولادي وأحفادي 18 واحد في سكنتين، كل سكنة 100 متر، وهذا هو تعداد سكاني، يعني تكاثر سكاني.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I wasn't able to unmute myself. So Hassan is saying that the construction that has been taking place in Walaja, that Israel calls illegal, is construction because of natural growth. Okay, and he's giving an example of him and his wife. They have 7 children. Some of them are married, so he also has grandchildren. Altogether, they are 18 people. And currently they are forced to live in just 2 apartments.
ونحن نريد أن نبني ضمن القانون وليس خارج القانون. نحن تحت القانون.
And we Hassan is saying, we, like the people of Walaja, we wish to build according to the law, but the law does not allow us to do it. But what we want is to be able to build according to them.
ورغم أن جميع الخدمات التي تحصل عليها قرية الولجة هي تحصل عليها من السلطة الفلسطينية، دولة الحكومات الإسرائيلية لا تنظر للسكان الولجة كسكان في شرقي القدس. فالكهرباء والماء وكل الخدمات هي ولا مدارس، ونحصل كل الخدمات من السلطة الفلسطينية. فقط ما نحصل عليه من الحكومة الإسرائيلية هي مشيخ هرسوت بكفار.
Whereas in this aspect of home demolitions or building and planning, Israeli authorities insist on enforcing the law. In all other aspects of life, Israeli authorities completely disregard Walaja. The people in Walaja do not receive any services from the Jerusalem municipality or from Israeli ministries, not education, not infrastructure, not electricity, and so on. All their needs are provided by the Palestinian Authority. And the only service is saying that, of course, ironically or cynically, the only service that they are getting from Israeli authorities is the home demolitions.
ولكن والحمد لله بمساعدة بعض المؤسسات الإسرائيلية مثل بينكم وReImagine، وبعض المؤسسات الأمريكية مثل تيلوس وأمريكان فور بيس ناو، استطعنا أن نحصل من المحكمة المركزية على قرار بإجبار الحكومة الإسرائيلية قبل 3 سنوات على الموافقة ليكون لسكان الولجة مخطط هيكلي لسكان الولجة.
So, and Hassan is saying that thank God with you know their insistence and the support of Israeli organizations, ReImagine, which is where I work, BIMCOM, which Sari here is on one in the audience that is also supporting the village, and Israeli residents of Jerusalem like Annie, and a lot of help from organizations in the United States. The village was able 2 years ago to reverse Israeli, you can say, position regarding the village, that, and for the first time, Israeli authorities expressed an agreement to consider a zoning plan for the village. So, you know, I said it in a very reserved way, willing to consider a zoning plan, but in comparison to what has been taking place since then, this is a very big and important change.
ومنذ ذلك اليوم ونحن نعمل على عمل مخطط هيكلي لسكان الولجة، فقمنا باختيار مخططة إسرائيلية تسمى أيالا، وهي ذات مهنية عالية في العمل وذو خبرة.
And so we are now, the Walaja community are putting a lot of efforts into making and advancing the zoning plan. They have hired a planner by the name of Ayala, and that's what they're aiming to do, and that's what they need the support and the help to get accomplished.
وهي عملت كل ما تستطيع أن تعمله اليوم، ولكن للأسف بعدها حسيت شلا تخنت في أبنية إسرائيلية عداين سامة كشاعين بديرخ لون تملا لتقدم كمت صريخ.
So the plan was designed, was made, and was submitted for review by the planning authorities. But like again, nothing is going easy, nothing is going smoothly. And for the last few months, actually, the planning authorities have been dragging their legs, have not been allowing the planning process to continue and or to advance. And actually, we are doing this event at a very crucial moment, crucial timing. We're all expecting an update from the planning authorities, which is supposed to be, they are supposed to update the Israeli Supreme Court in the beginning of April.
وفي كل دول العالم أفيف من يقوم بالتخطيط هي الدولة، وذلك لتكلفة التخطيط العالية. فالمخطط الذي نعمل عليه يكلف سكان الولجة حوالي 400,000 دولار أمريكي.
שקל, لا? חסן, אני חושב...
זה מיליון 200 אלף שקל.
כן.
מיליון 200 אלף בערך. זה 350,000 דולר.
אני אתרגם, וגם אני חושב מבחינת הזמן, כדאי אולי לתת גם לאני לספר, אז אולי כזה
לא נשאר לו כמה מילות, זהו, סיימתי.
מעולה, אז אני רק אתרגם אותך. So, Hassan was saying that anywhere in the world, actually it's also true for Israel, the responsibility for planning lies on the state, on the authorities. They are the ones who are supposed to do planning. The Walaja community is forced to take responsibility for planning of the village instead of the state. And there are all kinds of challenges with it. One of the big ones is the financial challenge. With the making of a plan is a very expensive issue. We deliberated whether it was $300,000 or $400,000. In any case, it's a lot of money, especially when you take into account that this community is under occupation and for decades has been suffering from all kinds of injustices.
Aviv, I don't want to jump in and cut Hassan off, but I do want to make sure we shift to Annie as well, because I think she can speak to ways that we can all come alongside in solidarity. So I want to ask Hassan if there's any final thoughts he wants to share before we shift. And I really hate to cut him off because it's so important to hear from voices directly on the ground. But I also want to invite Annie afterwards to share how we can partner.
Definitely, thanks for that. So I'll just ask Hassan, like what's his concluding remarks. אז חסן, באמת, מה אתה עוד רוצה להגיד לפני שנעבור לאני?
כל מה אני אגיד שאני אגיד תודה רבה לכם ותודה רבה על המפגש הזה, ונגיד كل التحية والتقدير والشكر لكل من دعمنا وساعدنا في هذا التخطيط، ونحن يدا واحدة نعمل من أجل نجاحنا في التخطيط وأن نمنع عمليات الهدم. نعمل معا من أجل وقف عمليات الهدم في قرية الولجة. شكرا لكم.
So Hassan is expressing again his deep gratitude for organizing of this event and for all of you who are present and are hearing. And we need to continue together in order to advance the plan and to make it happen and to solve this problem.
Shukran katir, Hassan.
Welcome, you're welcome.
Annie, I'd like to draw you in now, and I'm going to drop in the chat after I'm done asking this question, a link to sign up to join the Friends of Walaja email list, so you can hear when there are campaign calls to support Walaja financially, to put out calls to action, to pressure our Congress people. But Annie, I'd love to turn to you now to hear more about what grassroots solidarity activism exists, what that looks like, especially from folks who live in West Jerusalem. As Aviv was saying, this is a question of land and demography. There's some de facto annexation, but I think having you all on this call, having this call in 3 different languages, really shows also that there's opportunity to work together across lines of difference, to build coalitions that work for justice, which is essential to peace. And I'd love to invite you to share what you think we need to hear about how to partner and ongoing efforts to do so in support of the village.
Sure. First of all, thank you so much, Sarah, for organizing this and for the wonderful way in which you've woven together this webinar. And thank you to Telos, who has been such an important partner to us. My name is Annie Kantar Ben Hillel, and I am part of a group called Friends of Walaja that Aviv started many years ago. And it consists of West Jerusalemites who have various connections with people in the village of Walaja. Everything that we do is in cooperation with the village. The village leads. They make the decisions, and we're here to support the decisions that they make and to provide whatever kinds of lobbying, advocacy, information, and just friendship that can be useful and meaningful. I myself, I'm a religious Jew. I mean, Friday night through Saturday night, you won't see me touching a phone, touching my computer, getting in a car. And I know that Telos is a faith-based organization. And I think that for me as a Jew and also as an Israeli, I came to Israel in 2001, actually, and stayed. I met an Israeli. I came here on a Fulbright and met a nice Israeli boy and remained. And, as a Jew and as an Israeli, to me, this is just the most beautiful kind of activism that I could ever ask for. And I feel so lucky to be able to be welcomed by the people of Walaja who have suffered so much at the hands of Israel, the country to which I'm a citizen. And a couple of the things that we do in Friends of Walaja, we have a program. We do various activities that bring people in and raise awareness of the village. Olive harvest, meeting the families, being part of that. There's a system of foods that the villagers make and produce from the lands of the village, which helps to keep the village lands that are so beautiful, help sustain them and sustain the agriculture on them. And that's and the some of the volunteers in Friends of Walaja assist in bringing and delivering those foods purchased by West Jerusalemites. And of course, on the political level, most important, the lobbying, not most important, but most important to our conversation perhaps, is lobbying officials, members of Knesset, local officials, people of influence, advocacy locally to because what in the end Walaja needs to stop the demolitions is for the zoning plan to be approved. The zoning plan needs to be approved if the demolitions are going to end. It's Walaja's right for the state to make that zoning plan, but we as activists understand that if that's not going to happen in the village, it's crucial for the village to have that zoning plan, then we will do what it takes to help the village attain that zoning plan in whatever way possible. So actions, the group, there's also a group, not a small group of Americans, some of you are here right now in the United States, who have been huge support to Walaja. We've gained great support from many individuals who are here and also not here right now. Americans for Peace Now, Trua, Amenu and Telos, Jewish religious leaders, Jewish lay leaders have been very active in putting pressure on the members of Congress and doing other kinds of lobbying to assist Walaja in obtaining this zoning plan, whether from the political level or or helping with funding in some of the fundraisers that we've had. And I will mention this might be of interest to some of you. Just now, I'll post it right now. A letter came out from Jan Schakowsky and Pocan stating their and it makes prominent mention of Walaja, and again states the importance that President Biden intervene and push for the Walaja zoning plan, which professionally has been it is rock solid as a zoning plan. It was made by one of Israel's best and most professional planners, and to tell Israel that it must be approved. And to finish, because I know that there are some questions that people have, I do encourage people to please, if you would like to stay updated on what is happening, we would be happy to send you updates. We do it only very occasionally. When there's something pertinent, I'll post that again, and you can give us your email address. Sometimes there are action alerts and potential fundraising opportunities that have been really helpful and needed. And I think to just finish, I would like to say that, most important, the support, the role of, you asked me to speak, Sarah, about the role of people overseas. And of course, most important is the help directly that is provided to the village through all of this advocacy and fundraising. But I can also say that as somebody who's trying as much as she can to stand with the people of Walaja, and having been at several of the demolitions in the past few weeks, I really can't convey the feeling of shame and helplessness that I feel, especially from, as a Jew whose moral tradition has always been that our relationship with people is even more important than our relationship with God. It's part of our relationship with God. And the way we treat people comes first and foremost. And justice is something that you pursue. And So for me, being there it's an extremely painful experience to witness those demolitions, to see the face of friends, the face of a young man who's a parent, and to see him watch his home fall, literally crumble in front of him, to be next to the sobs of a woman who has 2 young children and is watching her home gone, to see proud, strong men pulling fixtures, hurrying to pull all the fixtures out of their homes so that at least they can save that, because the demolitions come in the morning and you have maybe 20 minutes. If you're lucky and you're one of the last demolitions, maybe you have an hour to get your things out. And of course, the circles expand to the families who are nearby and watch this, and the young children who see this and are worried for themselves as well. And, you know, amid this terror, to know that I can say to the villagers, there are people who are watching, there are people who care. You're not alone. It's not just me. It's many people who care. There are other circles who care and who see you. And also for me to know that there are people who care, that I'm not alone as I watch, makes a big difference. And these actions and these opportunities to be involved that we send out they might seem very small. They actually are incredibly meaningful for I think those of us who are acting on the ground and trying to help and stand with Walaja the best that we can, and also, of course, and first and foremost, for the villagers. So thank you all for everything that you do.
Thanks, Annie. I really appreciate your words and your insights. I wish we had another half hour. I have so many thoughts in response to everything all 3 of you have shared. But given the tight timeline, a lot of the questions we had were answered by Aviv in the first half, and we'll send out the recording. But I want to land with some framing thoughts from Telos, and I've put our principles and practices in peacemaking in the chat for those of you who are less familiar with to check out. I think our conversation today, as I mentioned, highlights so many of these so well. It's the relationships across lines of difference that fuel transformation. It's the need to center the leadership of those most impacted. It's the listening to understand and holding perspectives in tension while also coming together to advocate and work for peace and justice, which are inherently intertwined. And I want to land on that idea of agency. We all have agency, and especially as Americans, given the past 6 months, but even the past 60 years, it's not a question of if we're involved, but how we're involved. And Annie mentioned the letter from Representatives Schakowsky and Pecan. This is a great chance to reach out and call your representatives, encourage them to read the letter and reach out. They're beholden to us, they're responsible to us. And I know so many of you have been consistently calling for ceasefire. Please continue to do so, but think about how you can also add advocacy for Walaja and other communities across East Jerusalem and the West Bank into your calls to action and advocacy. We'll send out a link or an email with all of the links and the different pieces we've talked about today. Krem, if you want to go ahead and drop those in the chat, that would be great. But don't worry if you can't open them all. I just want to thank the 3 of you for coming and speaking and demonstrating what it means to work for mutual flourishing, freedom, dignity, security, human rights for Israelis and Palestinians in equal measure. And I hope that those of you who joined us today walk away convicted to sign up to learn more about Walaja, to respond to the call to action when that's sent out by the Friends of Walaja, and to think about how you can harness your agency to work for mutual flourishing in a time where we need that more than ever. So Aviv, Annie, Hassan, thank you so much, Shukran Katir, for being with us and spending your time educating us and holding us accountable to our own values and getting us to commit to action. So thank you so much for your time and for everyone for joining.
You all, thank you so
Thank
much,
you very
Telos,
much.
and thank you all for taking the time to hear the story of Walaja. Thank you so much for taking the time. It means a lot to all of us.
We hope to see you all in another event soon, and please do subscribe to our email and newsletter to hear more information about events like this. We also put out calls to action. Subscribe to the email from the Friends of Walaja, and stay engaged. Don't lose hope. We often say that hope is what you do, and we thank you all for joining us. Until next time, take care.
Thanks, Sarah.